So I'm not playing any sounders. I'm just bringing in guests so we can talk stuff.
No Sounders, no Seattle Sounders.
No, none.
Yeah, no.
Zero. Absolutely. And I see as you drop in here on a Wednesday. I first off, I forgot to ask you, what was the mug today?
Yeah, I'm horrible with trying to show it, but this is my here we go. Turn it a little bit this way.
Yes, be a
My
goldfish.
Ted Lasso, be a goldfish.
Absolutely. So, have you seen or have you become a disciple of Ted Lasso as a
Yeah,
show?
yeah, a while back. It was I almost wish I found it later because I'm just now like, when is the season going to happen, right? Like,
Yes.
I've gone through Wrexham now, like, I'm, but yeah, no, I from the beginning loved and still love Ted Lasso.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like we enjoy it, but then we end up watching it more than once with the episodes, and you pick up things. And I think that that's a sign of a good show, where you pick up things that you didn't initially pick up by watching it the first time. And I
Right.
think that's the sign of any good show. I will readily admit, I will watch from season 1. I will watch episodes 7 through 10. I will binge watch from making Rebecca great again all the way through the end of season 1. I'll binge watch those 4 episodes like that. And so that's and Wrexham I'm getting into. I kind of joined it late, and I didn't have the heart to watch the last episode of season 1 knowing what the result was. It's like
Yeah,
cringeworthy stuff. And it's like, I don't know if I can watch that.
that's also a hard one too because I think in our world, especially, it's hard to not get spoiled because, and I think especially now with the show's popularity, right? Like we're seeing more and more Wrexham in our mainstream soccer media, right? So we kind of know that they're in the FA Cup, right? We know where they are in the table this year, so it's going to be a challenge, I think, for the next season of Wrexham to, I mean, you're still going to be inside of it, but a lot more is known, right, about their results and those kind of dramatic portions of your show, just because of its popularity.
If you could do a series on a franchise or a topic that could be either Wrexham-esque or something like that, if Dylan Butler could EP a project that it would go to either FX or Netflix or something like that, what soccer team would you focus on and why?
Perhaps this is too close to my heart, right?
Those are the best projects sometimes, though.
I, I I would say Newcastle because of and I think you'd have to probably go back a little bit if it's like the perfect scenario, like to the new ownership and Ashley being out, and how the celebration and the belief among the supporters, because that's what a good show is, right? That's what Ted Lasso is about, right? Like just the belief in something could happen, right? I think, and that's what the new ownership brought to Newcastle. I guess it could have some crossover appeal to the States because of Miguel Almiron and everything that he's doing for Newcastle. And then listen, I've been there, and I think it's one of the greatest football soccer towns there is, and I think a deep dive into that culture and the people. I mean, granted, Sunderland did it as well, but they're not Newcastle, right?
No.
So I think I would say that would probably be the one. Like I think we've seen that a little bit in MLS and in the early days of LAFC, right? That was interesting on ESPN Plus as well. But yeah, no, I would say that for me, that would be it. I mean, again, it's close to the heart, but I think that would be a good one.
And when I came in this morning, I had some recommended listening for everybody, and it is the new Adam Crafton podcast on Shakhtar Donetsk, where they've done a lot of stuff behind the scenes ever since the war broke out, and they've had unparalleled access to the team and the players. And so that series has come out in podcast form. That, for me, would be the story. Soccer in wartime with Shakhtar Donetsk and possibly the Ukrainian Premier League.
Yeah, you certainly beat me to that. Mine is just kind of a Premier League team trying to build back up to what it once was. But yeah, yours has a bit more real world drama in it.
So was there any real world drama to you in the Final Four before we got to MLS Cup?
So it's funny. I would say not really. It's the rare occurrence of chalk for the most part, right? Like NYCFC beating Montreal technically was an upset as a 2-3, right? But I didn't think it was really. But outside of that, it's been chalk. So we haven't had those, crazy like Real Salt Lake, no shots on goal beating, Seattle kind of moments in the postseason. So in that sense, to this point, you would say it's maybe been a little bit boring because it's been a little bit predictable, but that we hope now sets up for what should be a really, really good MLS Cup final, right? Because it's truly the two best teams in the league. And I think the cool part of that too is that showed itself during the regular season as well, right? Like that's the other rarity of it. The Shield winner and the runner-up to the Shield, and oh, by the way, they were tied on points, right? Like, I think that's what should set this up to be a really good Cup final. And we can get into it, but the different. And I had this on my OSDB Sports.com story as well on Sunday, or published on Monday. I think what makes this really interesting too is that it's contrasting styles, it's different ethoses between the two clubs and how they build their roster. So it's the glamour of LA and the grittiness of Philly. All kinds of fun stuff there.
The dichotomies are very interesting in this. But let me ask you this: when it comes to LA and Philly, are we going to have any hate watching here because of these different ethoses that have made it to the last game of the year, where we had chalk for the first time ever, I think, or at least in the last decade? We've had, the 2-1s make it in. I think it's 3 out of the last 22, and these are 2 of those last 2. How much hate watching are we going to have here?
From different fan bases?
Yeah, from different fan bases here.
Well, think about this, if you will. If you are a Red Bull supporter, how much have you hated the last 2 years now, right? Where the team on the other side of the George Washington Bridge plays in it and wins it last year, and now the team on the other side of the Turnpike is playing in it this year. I got to think that's and they play your style, right? Like they play the same way you do, but they do it better.
Yep.
They build rosters the same way that you do, but they do it better. So I got to think there's hate watching going on there for sure. I got to think there is for the Galaxy, right? Because for the longest, they were that team, right? And their biggest rival on the West Coast were the Earthquake, and they were always better than the Earthquake. They have more trophies, and obviously the Cali Clasico was pretty hot there for a while, but ultimately it was the Galaxy who prevailed, and they did it in large part by getting these mega stars, if you will, right? The Beckhams and the Keens, and obviously Landon Donovan doing his thing, and now LAFC, those noisy neighbors, in near downtown. They're the ones who have done that better, right? So I got to imagine that those two fan bases are hate watching. I think for a lot of the neutrals, I think it's a good. I think it's again because what we've seen from the teams, I think it's a good watch for most other supporters.
All right, so Coco is in this morning, and Coco
Right.
on a wall pass Wednesday has been promoting the notion of a Major League Soccer franchise. I asked what folks would do soccer related if they won the Powerball, considering Powerball's over $1 billion. I said, what soccer thing would you do if you won Powerball? And Coco wants to
what I would do.
Major League Soccer. Well, we'll get to that in just a second. Keep that thought down. Coco wants to pay for an MLS franchise in New Orleans and move it to the University of New Orleans facility that is being built for football. But Coco, so how long till Red Bull HQ looks at Philly and thinks they do the Red Bull system better than Red Bull, sell Red Bull to whomever and buy Philly and make it Red Bull Philly?
It's a good question. I think there's more cachet with Philly as a marketing tool than New Jersey, which is why they kept New York, even though obviously so much of the franchise is affiliated with New Jersey. So, yeah, great question, right? And you've seen more. You've seen more Philly players make that jump over and play, for Salzburg and well, actually no, it's even, right? Isn't it? Because Aronson and Tyler Adams both played for Leipzig, so 1-1 in terms of those players moving over, I guess. So
then the other thought from Joe Bost. I dislike Philly so much, and LA's been pretty good since inception, but Vela grates on my nerves like fingernails on a chalkboard.
Really? I wonder why is that?
And I in talking to fans with who dislike LAFC, specifically with Carlos Vela, they feel that he complains too much, he dives too much. And he complains when he doesn't get calls. I think it has to do with the complaining nature of Carlos Vela and him trying to earn things and being blatant about it when there's no way in hell it would be called.
What's funny for me about Vela, and he might like this as well. We've seen it now. I want to say at least 2 or 3 times where he says that he's injured. Yes. Calls for a sub, and then he complains that the sub is being made.
Yes, exactly.
What is that about?
Exactly. You get mad at Cherundolo because I mean, if I remember correctly, in the playoffs, we saw Vela literally do this.
Yep.
And then Cherundolo pulls him, and then he's walking off, and he doesn't even acknowledge Steve Cherundolo on his way to sitting down.
Yeah, did it with Bradley, right? Remember that early on? I think it was a Traffico, I think, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah. And so you have that, and then Coco says along those same lines, Vela thinks he deserves superstar calls, but he isn't a superstar.
I mean, I think his resume would speak differently, and what he's done in this league as well. I think he's a superstar, certainly. I think what's super interesting here too is we go back to the mid-season acquisitions, right? And Bale making all these headlines, and dude hasn't made. And
that's all he's made. That is all he and Chiellini have made is just headlines.
And you know what? If it was all about him getting minutes and fitness for Wales, maybe Cherundolo is acting on Verhalter's behalf because there's been no minutes to be had.
Okay, so all right, here's the deal. Here's what you do. Now you bring in Bale. He's in the same group that we are. Now, can you do me a favor, Steve? Make sure that distract him. Get him at Riviera. Make sure he goes to Riviera a lot. I mean, that is a great black helicopter theory,
right? They have like Hollingshead, kick him a little bit at training.
or have Chiellini do you a solid, like the Karch Karai move that he pulled when he first came in.
Yeah,
with the SWAT. almost getting a yellow before even getting a chance to play. But no, I mean, you bring in John Thorrington brings in all of these names. You bring in Chiellini, you bring in Bale, and you're getting better results out of Buanga and Arango. And you were thinking that you might get rid of Chicho Arango when you were bringing these guys in.
Yeah.
And now Chicho Arango's the one who seems to be doing more of the heavy lifting right now, and Carlos Vela is not really showing up on the score sheet that much.
And then even Opoku is your sub last match, and it's not Bale, right?
Yeah. So what do you I mean, do you legitimately think, and I think that this is why I'm leaning towards the team in Chester, the Chester Union FC, that they will try to be physical. They will try to be their standard amount of physical. And I have always maintained that when LAFC's front line and all of those activators that they have on offense, when they are bumped around, when they are being tossed about, when they're being chopped down, when they're being physical against, if that is a word or a phrase, that they get frustrated and they're not allowed to do what they like to do artistically. Then they get mad. Then they're drawn into cards, which is what Philly wants you to do in the first place. I have yet to see LAFC respond against a physical team and come out the other side with a win. I think this plays into Philly's hands.
I agree. Like they want it to look as many. They want it to be a rock fight, right? They want that physicality ratcheted up to 11. They want as many balls in the air and 50-50 challenges. And so in that sense, advantage Philly. And look, I don't know if they're so concerned about, giving away fouls and set pieces because of how good Andre Blake has been. Right.
Yeah.
So, that's another advantage. I think that might be the biggest advantage that Philly have in this match is the Blake factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's funny because, again, when you take a deeper dive into the roster build for LAFC, it was very interesting, right? Because in the off season, last winter, it was all about the players with MLS experience, right? So you bring in Ilie, right, at defensive mid. You bring in Crepeau, a position where they've struggled from the very outset. LAFC.
You ain't kidding.
You bring in Hollingshead, right, who's been one of the best at his position as well. You bring in Kellen Acosta, right, and then you flip the script in the summer, and that's now when you make your big off-season moves, right? So those players have been helpful, but if you're going like head to head, Crepeau has been good. He is not Andre Blake.
No,
right?
No.
Conversely, Philly really didn't make many moves, right? Like a couple of moves because they were there. They were there a year ago. They didn't need to make the moves. So, it was more tweaks than anything. And one of those was one of the best moves of the year, right? Bringing in Julian Carranza from Miami, right?
Yep.
A guy who is a pressing forward, who will do that dirty work for you as well. So I think, again, another one of those fun storylines to think about coming into this cup.
When you look at Philly, it doesn't look like they'll have Alejandro Bedoya.
Yeah.
And I think he went 25 or 30 before he felt the same injury again, motioned to the bench, and it was a great set of ears by Kendra D. St. Auburn, who just happened to be right there at that moment when Bedoya says, I can't go, and they had to swap him out. How do you think they will adjust not having Bedoya for the last game of the year, which is the most important game of the year?
Yeah, I mean, tactically, it'll be the like for like is Jack McGlynn. He'll come in, but he's there's certain qualities that Bedoya brings that McGlynn doesn't.
That's qualities. That's a good word to use. Yes.
It's no, but I mean, listen, but Bedoya, injury aside, when he's 100%,
Mm-hmm.
the guy covers so much ground.
Yeah. Totally.
And he opens up so much space for others as well, because it's not just, he's not running around like a chicken with his head cut off. It's tactical running to create space for others, right? It's that selfless off ball running. So you lose that, you lose that that savvy, right? That veteran savvy, the soccer IQ. Not that McGlynn doesn't have it, but he's just younger.
That.
What you'll get from McGlynn is just all out hustle and running, and but those other factors that I think in a one-off, in a 90-minute cup final, are so important. Yeah, that'll be a loss for sure for Philly.
Yeah, I mean, because when you bring in McGlynn, and you mentioned Philly just tweaking, and I think that Philly can tweak because of their academy and their build, and so they have young guys that are there from 15, 16. I mean, all you have to do is look at the Aaronsons, the unending supply of Aaronsons that they can get at Wawa, and have that as, McGlynn and Aaronson and all of those academy guys that are in this system, learning the system very, very young, and they can be inserted into the lineup. To your point, they just don't have that level of professional experience. They understand the mission. They just haven't been in it in Major League Soccer situations, Major League postseason situations, and now an MLS Cup. So that was, to your point, yeah, you bring in McGlynn, he gets it. He just doesn't have the reps that Bedoya does in situations like this.
Correct. And I think there's more players, even though it's LAFC's first cup as well. I think that there's players there in other leagues and other situations who have played in similar matches, right? Mm-hmm. Not that necessarily Philly doesn't have any of those guys, right? But I think maybe LAFC has a little bit more of that cup final savviness, if you will.
So the two managers. Now, I feel like this is the old NFL Today segment, where you've had Brent and Jimmy the Greek sitting there and looking at the 5 categories, and like offense, defense, keeping, coaching, intangibles. All right, so then let's do it the old NFL Today style. Offense, Philadelphia or Los Angeles?
That's a good question. I think your natural inclination would say LA, but again, you look at the numbers that a Carranza has put up, that a Gazdag has put up, and they're right there with them, right? So I would almost say even.
Okay, so even. All right, so it's even. Defense, Philadelphia or LAFC?
Yeah, Philly, for sure. Okay, clearly.
Goalkeeping, Philly?
Philly, yep.
Coach, Cherundolo or Curtin?
That's a tough one. Look, Curtin's coach of the year, right? In the league. I don't know. Like, it's hard to. I don't have a feel. I don't think on Cherundolo as a coach, right? Like, I haven't really. I don't think had many issues with subs that he's made. I like that they've got some tactical flexibility there.
It sounds like you're saying even.
Yeah, maybe, but maybe a slight edge to Philly with look, he brings Corey Burke off the bench, right? He scores the winner. Right. That makes him look really smart, certainly.
Yes, absolutely.
So maybe a slight edge, but to Philly, if not even, yeah.
Okay, so Philly lean.
Yeah.
So right now it is 2 to Philly with a lean and an even. The intangibles, whatever you would consider the intangibles, category 5.
Well, it should be home field, right?
But the thing is, USC football has already said, by the way, there's no parking for you.
Yeah.
Because we got a football game. you can't park. You've got to go for the shuttle buses at Dodger Stadium. You've got to take the metro. You've got to find other ways to the stadium because we got college football and we need the revenue. That to me,
I think they'll find the way.
the 3252 will find a way. That I want to find out what they end up with that. Folks have been dropping in. Joe Boss says LAFC probably has the experience depth edge. And Soccer for Good OG, more effective weapons in attack for Philly. Tactics-wise, Philly has the edge. They're going to frustrate the hell out of LA.
That's the plan. That's their game for sure. That's what their game plan is.
So when is this going to go more than 90, do you think?
We haven't really had much of that, right? We had Dallas. Well, we had Salt Lake and Austin go to PKs, right? Who I think Dallas, right? Dallas went to PKs. That was it. I was at the Miami NYCFC match, so I didn't see the end of that. But that was a Panenka winner for Dallas, right? So that went to PKs. We haven't really had many matches, right? This playoffs go. I think it'll go. I don't think it'll go past 90.
The last, I'll go black helicopter on this one. The last match in the
that's how they're getting there, by the way. The 32-52.
Exactly, is correct. They will match with gold trim.
Yes.
The last match in the current TV era goes as long as it possibly can. I think that you get mandates. You get mandates from the front office. Get this to go as long as we can. We need the windows expanded and the ad revenue. Make this go as long as possible.
I think that's a huge edge that Philly, right?
Yeah, I think so. Sean Vergara, LAFC has to win. Philly's playing with house money, is what Sean's saying.
I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, we listen. We've seen it with Red Bulls. We've seen it with Atlanta. Like those special teams.
Mm-hmm.
The window isn't very big, right? And like NYCFC had a similar situation where, you felt like if they didn't win last year, when were they going to win? Obviously, they made a trip to the Eastern Conference Finals again this year, but there's only a finite amount of time. So yes, they're a young team. There's always going to be changes in teams, but I wouldn't say house money. I mean, like Philly were so close last year. Now they're in the Cup final. They've been in Open Cup finals. Now is their chance to close it out. And I think, you can make the argument with LAFC as well, right? Like, how different are they going to look next year as well? So it's edge to them because they're home, and maybe more pressure on them because they're home. But there's certainly pressure on Philly to close it out too.
Do we know who center ref is for MLS Cup? Have we heard that yet?
I have no. There's usually that announcement, like I think either today or tomorrow, right?
Oh, update! Breaking news sounder.
Oh,
Ismail Elfath will be in the middle. Corey Rockwell, Ian Anderson are your ARs. Joe Dickerson is the fourth. Drew Fisher is your VAR. Jeff Mushik is your AVAR. Jeffrey Greason is the reserve AR. So Ismail Elfath is the man in the middle, and I think that is a stellar choice.
Yes, it's not Mr. Uncle, which is a good thing.
It's not Uncle. It's not Ford. It's not Dickerson in the center. Having Ismail Elfath, I figured that my gut was going to tell me it was Ismail Elfath because with him heading to Qatar, you get this assignment as the marquee match of Major League Soccer for the year. It makes a lot of sense. All right. So before you go, Hani Mukhtar named MVP. Was it Mukhtar for you or was it Driussi?
Mukhtar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. I thought so. And I think even too, we saw that in the head-to-head meetings as well. I thought he was better.
Then would you petition for the voting deadline to be pushed further back?
To include the playoffs?
To include the playoffs.
I don't know. It's a slippery slope. Is it based on the regular season? Is it based on the season? Like, I don't have a problem with it being a regular season award.
Okay.
There's a postseason award as well, or really a cup final, I guess, technically award. But yeah, I don't have an issue with the way it is right now.
Okay. So then,
But you're right. I mean, had it included the playoffs, I'm not sure Hani Mukhtar wins it.
right, and that was kind of what I was leaning toward here. Since Mukhtar got the early exit, Driussi made it the extra round. We got to see what Driussi was been able to build for Austin as a part of this process. A couple of
Actually,
other,
you know what? I'm sorry, John. I think it actually would further fuel the argument for Andre Blake.
yeah, that's true. Absolutely, I think I think it would. So, but do you have any negative vibe about doing the equivalent of a pitcher winning both the Cy Young and the MVP? That's what this would mean to me. If Andre Blake was to get both MVP and keeper, that's like giving a pitcher both Cy Young and MVP.
Mixed emotions on that, because there is an award for that position.
Right.
There's not, I mean, there is a defender of the year, obviously. There's not like a forward of the year. There's not a midfielder of the year necessarily.
And I
but
mean,
look, they're both positions that heavily impact games, right?
Yeah,
So,
right.
I don't know if I would necessarily vote for that a player in that position to be MVP, but I get it.
And a couple of other rapid fires before we go. All right, so then you're leaning Philly for this one, right?
In all those
in our 5 categories, you had 2 for Philly, a lean for Philly, and then you had an even and the intangibles went to Los Angeles. So basically, it was like 2+ for Philly, and it was like 2+, 1 and 1 toward Philly. If we did it the old NFL Today style.
Yes.
Who's your MVP?
It has to go to the winner. So now I have to say who the winner is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Does it go to Andre Blake?
I will say it goes to Andre Blake.
Okay, all right.
And as part of that, first goal is massively important. Now, Philly flipped the script a little bit on this theory, because they conceded the first goal against NYCFC, but
Right.
then in obviously rapid fire, they took that back. But if Philly scores the first goal, especially if that first goal comes in the first half, they are so hard to play catch up against. So I guess in this, saying that Blake would be the MVP is saying that Philly wins it, which says that Philly, I think, gets the first goal, frustrates LAFC. LAFC pushes numbers later in the match, and Philly maybe gets a counter. And I'm looking at maybe a 2-0 for Philly.
Okay, I'm right there with you. I like that assessment. So then who gets the yellow card first, Jose Martinez or Carlos Vela?
Oh, there is Martinez, absolutely.
Or does Martinez goad Vela? That's why I gave you this combo, because does Martinez goad Vela into something, and then Ismail Elfat has to sit there and flash the card?
I think it's either going to be. Well, I think it's definitely Martinez.
Okay.
And I think it's either going to be the really harsh tackle, like in the first 20 minutes,
okay.
or the persistent infringement variety, where it's his 7 fouls in the first half that finally do it for him.
Sean Vergara, one of our listeners, says Blake gets MVP, especially if this goes to PKs.
Yeah, no, true.
All right. So the last question, and you have gone into extra time this morning, as you always seem to. Actually, 2. Wow, Chiellini with the game winner. Wow, that's off the board. All right. So Powerball's over $1 billion.
Yeah.
What soccer-related thing would you do if you won Powerball?
I mean, other than purchase season tickets for Newcastle and get the private jet and go over there every weekend.
Yeah, something other than the Newcastleian supporting the PIF. Yeah.
I'm building that stadium for NYCFC. Right? in Queens. Let's go.
Oh, Dylan Butler Stadium finally gets built. Oh, that's amazing.
Well, we'll get naming rights. We'll make sure that I get some of that money back. But
Okay. Well,
yeah.
until you find that major sponsor, actually, who would be the first sponsor that you court?
There's already that connection with Etihad, right? So there's probably something there, I guess, with Manchester, with the
Right.
CFG.
Yeah, so CFG would probably go ahead and invest anyway. But what local sponsor? What other sponsor would you try to track down? Because actually, one of our listeners, Tom Russo, the resident Everton fan, the Airborne DJ, SDH Stadium. That'd be epic. Oh, that'd be awesome. But SDH all over the place.
And then somewhere there in the corridors or the hallways, we'll have an ode to all of the home stadiums and all the home fields that NYCFC have played at throughout the years.
All of the framed photographs of all of the different locations.
Yeah.
Including Rutgers for Open Cup and things like that. Viewing, what are you going to be doing for the game in and of itself? Are you going to be a civilian? Do you actually work this? What's going on?
No, I'm working it, but also I have a playoff football game at 1:30.
Ooh.
So yeah, it's gonna be a tight squeeze.
Okay. All right. So who's the playoff game?
Big rivalry game, Chaminade and Kellenberg. Both in the Catholic Football League, both from the same religious order. So they pool the same group of players. It's the 4-5 game in the AAA. The winner likely plays St. Anthony's, which is another rivalry game, especially if it's Chaminade St. Anthony's. So it was funny. Not to go too long here, but the maybe a month or so ago, I started thinking about this matchup, these matchups, and could we even get it? How can we get it? It was really what I wanted to happen, and actually, what I needed, how this came about, was final seconds of St. Anthony's Stepanak on Friday night, a blocked field goal attempt, which would have been the winner for Stepanak, which would have given Stepanak the top seed and just erased a lot of these things happening. St. Anthony's blocks it. This kid Ian Strong, who, by the way, you will hear about him in years. He's a Rutgers commit, but he's gonna play on Sundays. So Ian Strong blocks the kick, and this kid Jaden Jenkins returns it 70 yards for a touchdown. St. Anthony's beats Stepanak 27-21. They are the top seed, and now the Long Island region of this bracket has emerged. So excited about that.
Okay, and so it is decision day coming up this Friday for Georgia high school football. It is where we take 425 and trim it down to 255. It is the playoffs, and everybody's getting their brackets out and working them in pen and pencil. For us Friday night, it's going to be election night coverage for yours truly, and it's one of the most flying around nights of the year. A couple of things. Abby says for Dylan Butler Stadium, you need a really good bagel shop, and spelled.
Oh, I got it. Yeah, there's already, and it's funny too, Abby. There's already one that's Utopia Bagels is already in City Field, so that's an easy fix, no doubt.
And bagel shop spelled PPE. Obviously, it has to be a bagel shoppy. And also for Dylan Butler Stadium, please guarantee Nathan's hot dogs with sauerkraut would be available inside the stadium.
Not a problem.
News from Tommy Scoops before you go. It looks like Anton Tinnerholm has told Swedish paper Expressen he's leaving NYCFC. Quote, I will leave now after the season. It's been 5 fantastic years where you experienced most of what can be in the U.S., but it's time for something else now, end quote. That is fresh from Tommy Scoops as of 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been a really difficult last 2 years for Tinnerholm. He has a young family as well. It was funny because they win the cup. He doesn't play in the match, obviously. He's been, when healthy, one of the best right backs in the league. Unfortunately, these last 2 years, he hasn't been. So yeah, perhaps something back closer to home for Anton Tinnerholm, but it's an interesting offseason. That's the first one to crumble. Alex Callens and Sean Johnson, both approaching free agency as well, or at least out of contract. So a lot of work to be done for NYCFC for sure.
All right, we've definitely kept you over time. We've gotten you into the second period of AET. So what's going on with you at MLS Soccer and OSDB?
Yeah, so obviously it's all about the cup, right? So I'll rehash MLS Cup and the winner's year for OSDBSports.com next Monday, and then it's all about looking forward to the World Cup, right? So we'll have some World Cup coverage as well. Obviously, the roster reveal comes up next week for the U.S. national team. So
Dylan Butler at Dylan_Butler, OSDB Sports, MLSsoccer.com. We've kept him far too long on a Wall Pass Wednesday. Go enjoy the rest of what is in your Goldfish mug this morning. Get ready for your playoffs in high school football. We'll catch up with you next week, my friend. We'll have a winner.
All right, buddy.